In this interview, we're going to meet Tom Eriksson. Tom is an interaction designer and researcher at the IBM Watson Lab in New York, and he's working in the social computing group. He's been here since '97, and before that he worked for Apple for 9 years. So Tom is actually the ideal person to tell us about social computing. So Tom, can you tell us, isn't it easier to manipulate people in the online world than it is in the offline world?
In fact, let me give one of my favorite examples. This is not an online system, but I take a lot of examples from just ordinary face-to-face interactions. So think about how elections work, okay? And I presume Europe is fairly similar to the US in this regard, that when I go in to vote, I go into a polling place, and there's a room. There are usually 3 people who are sort of organizing people. You come in, they give you a ballot out in public. You walk over, and there are booths, and you go into the booth. It has sides, so they can't see who you're voting for. But on the other hand, the booth doesn't totally block you out. Typically, the sides only come down to about knee level, right? So you can look and you can see whether a booth is occupied, and you can see that there's only one person in the booth. Then you finish voting, you come out, and you put your ballot in the ballot box, which is out in public view, so people can see that you're just putting in one ballot, not 2 or 3, right? People could see in the voting booth you were alone and therefore not being influenced by someone else. So one of the things that I think is very interesting in designing systems is how you mix visibility and privacy to achieve certain results, right? Because you can have an invalid election if, say, I'm being forced to vote a particular way, or you can have an invalid election if I can put, stuff the ballot box with multiple ballots. And so you design the system very carefully to support the process that you're doing with it.
How would you translate that to a social computing system?
Well, for example, it depends a lot on what you're trying to do, but let's imagine that you have some kind of online system where you want to make some decisions, or you want to brainstorm, right? There's some kind of tasks that we know that work a bit better when you're anonymous. So, for example, brainstorming tends to work together work better if people are mutually anonymous, because that sort of suppresses concerns about looking stupid, or saying something that somebody who's more powerful than you will say. So we can imagine a kind of system where you go in and you brainstorm a bunch of ideas, and at that point you're anonymous. And then at some point, maybe you move to another phase and people become identified, and then you have some discussions about some of the ideas and try to integrate them and say, how do these fit together, and what do you think of this, and so on and so forth. So that's just one example of how you might have a system where in one phase it's useful to be anonymous, in another phase it's useful to be identified.
But I guess in the online world it would be easier to manipulate people, because you can hide things, because in the election box I can see, okay, there's only one person, but I guess you can cheat a little bit in the online space, couldn't you?
You could, right? And that's an interesting design decision. One of the things, there's a difference between persuasion and shaping behavior and manipulation. And I think one of the key differences is how visible you make the intention, right? So to me, manipulation has to do with deceit, right? You're not being upfront about what you're doing. Whereas if I just sit down and that I'm going to try to persuade you about something, that seems fair. If I'm instead trying to secretly sort of bring you to a particular opinion without letting you know I'm doing that, that's manipulation.
And it could be raising the bids also in an auction.
Yeah, exactly. So, and and note that this stuff happens in real auctions too, right? So there is a concern about they have the term shilling, right?
Yeah.
For
but I guess it's easier in a real auction to see. Okay, you can't put the same person in all the time. They have to. It's more difficult in the real world, you can say, because they had to have lots of people coming in there and cheat.
Yes, that's true. And
so it is a little bit easier in the online world, I guess.
It would depend how you design the system, right? Certainly in sort of public internet systems where to become an active member of the system, all you need is an email address. I can have 10 email addresses, or it's very easy to get them. There was a great paper by a guy whose name I can never remember, and Paul Resnick, sorry guy, called "The Social Cost of Cheap Pseudonyms," and it basically made the argument that one of the problems we have in online systems is that it's so easy to get an email address and therefore get a new identity, and so you don't need to take care of your identity because you can throw it away and get another one. And so one solution to this might be to provide identities that are more expensive or make it harder to get a second identity, right? And sometimes this happens naturally. So somebody, say, gets onto Wikipedia, or you're a seller on eBay, and after you're there for a while and you've edited a bunch of articles and made some friends, or you've developed a reputation as a vendor of quality products, well, then you start caring about your identity, and you're going to be more reluctant to do something that damages it. On the other hand, if you're there the first time, maybe you just have to kind of take a chance on the person, right? And you're taking a big chance because they don't have anything invested in their identity. And that's one of the points that the cheap pseudonyms paper makes is when identities are cheap, they're not as useful.
Do you know of any interesting or funny war stories of users finding out that they have actually been manipulated on purpose?
Yeah, there are a couple of stories on the identity topic. So both of these come from Babel. And in the early days of Babel, we were just using it in my group at IBM, and so we all knew one another, and had talks about not things that were deeply private, but about things that we wouldn't necessarily have public talks about. And then one day, somebody new showed up in Babel, and I can't remember the name, but it just had some kind of generic name, and it threw us into consternation because we thought, well, somebody new has hacked into Babel, and one of the things that made Babel a bit different from an ordinary chat system is that the chat stayed around forever, right? So somebody hacked in, and they could see everything we'd ever talked about there, and besides just being unhappy that somebody had hacked in, we kind of wondered, oh my goodness, what have we said, and what is that person going to be reading? Well, it turns out that the chief programmer had, during the middle of the night, decided it would be fun to create a bot, and so it was just the bot logging, and the bot would log into Babel, and if somebody was there and nobody else was, it would say hello. He thought that would be friendlier, and instead it caused a little bit of a ruckus.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thank you so much, Tom, for sharing some of your knowledge and perspectives on social computing. It's been very interesting. And you can also, of course, read the chapter Tom has written at interactiondesign.org. And here you can find similar chapters, all written by thought leaders and inventors, and you can find videos as this one as well. Thanks for watching.